Coming up on Network Africa. Amnesty International urges the Ethiopian government to begin investigation into July's mass killings of the Oromia ethnic group members. Moroccan Association for Human Rights says 27 and not 23 migrants killed in border crackdown in June. Plus, the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali says it regrets expulsion of its spokesperson. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Tenyola Shubowale. Rights watchdog Amnesty International has called on the Ethiopian authorities to launch an impartial investigation into last month's killing of more than 400 members of an ethnic group that is a minority in the country's Oromia region. The killings showed the attackers' utter disregard for human life, according to a new report by the organization. The violence in Tole area of Gimbi district saw farming villages populated by ethnic Hamaras targeted. It has been blamed on the armed group, the Oromo Liberation Army, but authorities have also been criticized for failing to respond fast enough to the violence. Government forces arrived hours after the attackers had left, despite being told about the attack much earlier, according to witnesses cited in the report. The OLA has denied carrying out the attacks, which it said was the work of a militia group set up by the government. The Moroccan Association for Human Rights has released a report putting the death toll from last month's attempt by hundreds of migrants to storm the border between the North African Kingdom and the Spanish enclave of Melilla higher than the official government tally. The human rights watchdog, known as AMDH, says at least 27 people, mostly from Sudan, South Sudan and Chad, died in the attempt, with that number likely to rise as many more suffered severe injuries and 64 people remain missing. The Moroccan government has previously reported 23 deaths in the June 24th border storming. AMDH and Nador officials, Umar Naji, said that Moroccan and Spanish authorities used smokes, bombs and tear gas to disperse the migrants who had gathered at the Baricino crossing area, which separates the Moroccan city of Nador from Melilla, leading to many people dying, although autopsies have not yet been carried out. The World Health Organization has launched the first ever world report on the health of refugees and migrants across the world. According to the global health body, around the world, millions of refugees and migrants in vulnerable situations, such as low-skilled migrant workers, face poorer health outcomes than their host communities, especially where living and working conditions are substandard. Based on extensive review of literature from around the world, the report demonstrates that refugees and migrants are not inherently less healthy than host populations. It is rather the impact of the various health determinants such as education, income, housing, access to services, compounded by cultural, legal and other barriers, and the interaction of these during the life course that are behind poor health outcomes.
Today, WHO is proud to launch the first world report on the health of refugees and migrants. 1 in every 8 people on our planet is a refugee or migrant, and the numbers are growing. With conflicts, climate change, growing inequality, and global emergencies such as the COVID-19 pandemic, more and more people will be on the move. Like anyone else, refugees and migrants have the right to the highest attainable standard of health. But the health needs of refugees, the WHO World Report on the health of refugees and migrants, is a landmark and an alarm bell. It provides a comprehensive overview of refugee and migrant health, demonstrating wide disparities between the health of refugees and migrants and the wider populations in their host countries. For example, Many migrant workers are engaged in the so-called 3D jobs, dirty, dangerous, and demanding, without adequate social and health protection or sufficient occupational health measures. The report also highlights a fundamental knowledge gap. Refugees and migrants are virtually absent from global surveys and health data, making these vulnerable groups almost invisible in the design of health systems and services.
And after a 2-year break, the voluntary repatriation of refugees from Angola to their home, Democratic Republic of Congo, has started again. It had been on hold since 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic led to the closure of the border between the two countries. Spokesperson for the UN Refugee Agency says a first convoy of 88 Congolese refugees departed from the Lavua settlement. Lavua camp in Angola hosts some 7,000 refugees. Many have not seen their families since fleeing political and ethnic violence in the DRC's Kasai region in 2017. More than 35,000 people crossed the border to find safety in Angola at the time.
The first convoy of 88 Congolese refugees departed from the Lavua settlement in northern Angola this morning towards the border with the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The convoy is expected to arrive in the DRC tomorrow. Although conflict continues in eastern DRC, improvements in security in the West have reopened the possibility for Congolese to return to their country in dignity and safety. UNHCR will always continue to advocate for the full support and essential services to be provided by the government, by the authorities, to those that are going back, especially when it comes to security, so they're able to rebuild their lives. This year, the operation has received 10.3 million United States dollars of the 29.8 million it needs. This is leaving a significant gap to address the basic needs of refugees and asylum seekers. And UNHCR in the DRC has received just 19% of the 225 million United States dollars it requires in the country to respond to the growing needs of those displaced on its territory.
And over in West Africa, the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Mali, MINUSMA, says it regrets the expulsion of its spokesperson by Bamako and pledged to continue fulfilling its mandate in the country. Mali on Wednesday ordered Olivia Salgado to leave the country in 3 days over what it calls unacceptable statements on the controversial arrest of dozens of Ivorian soldiers in Bamako on July the 10th. Mr. Salgado had said that Mali was notified of the arrival of the Ivorian soldiers, whom the military-led government accused of being mercenaries planning to destabilize the transition. Mali suspended MINUSMA's troop rotations shortly after and allegedly barred 8 soldiers from the German contingent from leaving Bamako. Turbulent relations between Mali's military leaders and the UN mission threatened to derail peacekeeping efforts and worsen the country's instability. And Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni has signed a cooperation agreement with the leader of an opposition party and former challenger, Norbert Mao. The pact between the ruling National Resistance Movement Party and the Democratic Party was signed on Wednesday, following a meeting between the two leaders at the State House. President Museveni praised the leaders of the Democratic Party for the gesture of mature, foresighted and constructive politics. Mr. Mao has been leader of the opposition party since 2010. He stood out for his eloquence and anti-establishment stance, but the party has suffered internal divisions for several years, which have led to a significant drop in public appeal. And the United Nations United Nations Development Programme and the United Nations Mission in South Sudan have partnered in supporting the gender mainstreaming reform process in South Sudan under a project funded by the Secretary General's Peace Building Fund, where women's networks in the police, military, prison service, civil defense, wildlife, and national security will be launched separately. For those in the security sector, reform within the sector was flagged as a priority. This reform can allow for unity amongst fighting forces, and this can in turn help reduce the likelihood of renewed war.
A recent launch of 2 networks for women in South Sudan's security sector provide a platform for uniformed female personnel in both the police and military to advocate for gender-responsive security institutions. Following South Sudan's September 2018 signing of the revitalized agreement on the resolution of the conflict, the provision of a 35% affirmative action quota was a great win for women in various sectors countrywide. Speaking at the launch, a top human rights official in the country encouraged participants and stressed that their participation in the sector is important.
I know very well that it will benefit women because women in uniform will really play a very big role because, for all this time, people are pointing fingers to the organized forces that they are the one, causing all the atrocities. But when we include women, because women are peace lovers, women are peace builders. When we include them, maybe things will really change, and we need them really to be there, to be side by side with the counterpart, the men, to serve and to help the security of the nation.
Rallying the police participants, the UN Miss Police Commissioner encouraged them, saying that the network will give them a unified voice to address gender-specific issues that they may have overlooked.
A gender-diverse service is necessary to create a safe and secure environment for women. Women often approach and solve problems from different perspectives than male counterparts. It is widely recognized that women police play a crucial role in responding to and preventing gender violence and crimes against women and children. As a service, you should strive to empower our female officers to enable to address these issues in the community, which will in the end improve the perception of the whole service.
A UN women representative says advancing the rights of women and girls will encourage security at community and the national levels.
These women's networks are vital, as we know that increasing the number of women in the security sector contributes significantly to women's overall security. Examples of these include protecting women's rights during armed conflicts, preventing impunity for gender-based crimes, mainstreaming gender aspects in security issues, and increasing women's participations in various phases before, during, and after conflicts. Importantly, women in uniform act also as role models in their local environments, which are often inspiring other women and girls in often male-dominated spaces and societies to push for their own rights and participation in peace processes. Increasing recruitment of women in the security sector is critical for empowering women in communities and addressing specific needs for women and girls in conflict and post-conflict settings.
Lamenting about their status and rankings, one of the female participants says the sectors would involve women more.
Our men in South Sudan, they're not involving us. Now, if I were to ask myself, how many women chief in South Sudan? Nothing. So, let men try women. Because for them to work alone is not good. Let us work together. We involve our women in all sectors. Like in Ghana, this protocol work is in, women are involved in protocol. Women are involved in VIP. Women are involved to go and work in other countries. What is the difference between us and other countries? Now, my message is, let us have policy of recruiting our girls, our educated women in the security sector, so that tomorrow they will go in peacekeeping.
And as women recruitment and ranking in the security sector continues to remain a concern countrywide, There's relief that these networks will allow the current cohort to boldly step forward as role models for the younger generation while making it attractive to join the service.
And still ahead on the program. Artist airplanes help education take flight in northern Ghana. More details in a moment. Please stay with us. Us over in South Africa, public hospitals are turning to robots to assist in performing complex medical procedures and surgeries. Recently, a robot assisted in removing a cancerous rectal tumor from a female patient in Cape Town.
A surgical team led by Dr. Tim Forgan used the Da Vinci G robot to assist in removing a cancerous rectal tumor from a patient at the Tygerberg Public Hospital in Cape Town. The robot, which has 4 arms and is controlled in real time by Forgan via an immersive 3D console, is the most advanced surgical robot currently used in Africa. It is one of only 2 such robots on the continent, both of them found in South African public hospitals in Cape Town.
Fortunately, the Western Cape Department of Health bought 2 Da Vinci robots, which is the Da Vinci XI, which is the most technologically advanced robot, surgical robot that's currently available on the market. And what they're designed for, what they do is they allow you to work very, very finely and with great precision. And they magnify the image that you're seeing a lot more than normal laparoscopic stacks, so we can see much more detail, and then the instruments you can maneuver with a lot more accuracy and do finer work and get a better result, so you can preserve more organs that way.
The system is being used mainly for complex type surgeries. The first operation with the new robot occurred at the Tygerberg Hospital in February this year, with dozens more successfully completed since then.
The patients have done very, very well. They go home much sooner, so our average length of stay is 3 days. So you have a major procedure, we remove big cancers, and 3 days later you're at home. And the complication rate has definitely come down. And chatting to the patients post-operatively, they have a lot less nerve damage. You can see that their function is way better than what we had originally. And we were doing all these ops with keyhole surgery, so we were already doing them with very small cuts, people going home after 5 days, now 3 days. It's definitely improved their quality of life, and they all tell me they feel as if they haven't had an operation.
2 years ago, the hospital also introduced a robot on wheels called Kania during the COVID-19 peak, to help patients connect with their relatives via video or a voice call.
This innovation like this one is very excellent, and also knowing that we just had a pandemic where family members couldn't get into the hospital. Now with this innovation, bringing your family members closer to you, since they can't be able to physically come into the hospital. That brings in a lot of relief, and also it's good psychologically for a patient as well. So this innovation, it's quite good.
Family members dial into Kania and visit patients remotely. Doctors and nurses use a phone app to steer the robot in and out of hospital wards to make it convenient for patients to easily communicate and request help when they need it from hospital staff.
The UN Secretary-General's Special Representative for Somalia, James Swan, has met with the leader of the country's northern federal member state of Puntland as part of efforts to advance Somalia's state-building processes now that a new federal government is in place. The collaboration with Somalia's new leadership, as well as the support of the United Nations, were also topics that were discussed in the meeting that included members of the Puntland State Cabinet.
In our meeting today with President Denny and members of his cabinet, We discussed a range of local and national issues of importance. President Deni and I exchanged ideas on how best to advance Somalia's state-building processes now that a new federal government is in place. We discussed the importance of a deep collaboration between the federal government and federal member states to lead progress on national priorities. President Deni reiterated his firm commitment to Puntland's process of democratization. He briefed me on the Transitional Puntland Electoral Commission's initial plans to roll out the process to other districts. I underlined the United Nations' readiness to support. Your efforts here, we hope, will also inspire and support the broader process of democratization across Somalia at the federal and on security. I expressed my concern about last week's troubling incident at the Bosaso airport. President Deni assured me of the government's commitment and active efforts to ensure continued stability and reconciliation. The ongoing drought is a crisis that is causing need and suffering across Somalia and the region. The scale of the challenge is immense, although it is clear to me from our discussions that the Puntland government and the humanitarian community are doing their utmost to respond. UN agencies are already responding through urgent programs of cash transfer, nutrition assistance, water and sanitation support, and health services.
The UK High Commissioner to Rwanda, Omar Daher, has disowned a memo sent to the Home Office advising against any asylum deal with the country. The memo had criticised Rwanda's human rights record and heavy-handed security, according to documents from the Home Office presented to court by lawyers for those challenging the policy. On Wednesday, Mr. Daher said the memo was written by his predecessor 2 months before he began in the post. Britain announced in April an agreement with Rwanda to send some of its migrants there for processing instead, but no one has yet been flown out because of a series of legal challenges. And to education, a world-renowned Ghanaian artist has built an open-door educational hub in rural northern Ghana, complete with 6 airplanes. During the school year, crowds of students regularly thread red clay's towering halls, hearing lectures on history or conservation before exploring former commercial airlines. Take a look.
Parked in a field in rural northern Ghana are 6 planes, miles from any runway. There's not an airport, but an open-door educational hub created by world-renowned artists. Red Clay Studio has been developed over 3 years by Ibrahim Mahama. The planes were an addition late last year. Mahama grew up in the capital, Accra. She says she wanted to give back to the village where he was born.
For me, it's very important, first and foremost, to be able to create an institution that is flat, that is horizontal, that can be able to reach different people regardless of their background they are coming from, class, struggle, whatever it is, political ideology and all that. At the end of the day, art is supposed to be able to create a space that would allow us to be able to go into a certain sense of dialogue, either with technology or with ecosystems or with architecture or any other thing.
Red Clay comprises several warehouse-sized buildings made from recycled materials and locally sourced red bricks. The materials are typical of Mahama, who made a name for himself, repurposing unwanted or discarded items into monolithic pieces of contemporary art. That work continues at Red Clay, which doubles as a personal studio. But during the school year, its towering halls are also crowded with students hearing lectures on subjects from history to conservation.
We want to be able to build an institution that can reinforce the idea of thinking, collective thinking. It's not so much about producing work that can also inspire artists, but produce thinkers. If children grow up and they can think differently from what their predecessors were thinking, it is a step towards a certain kind of eminent change within our society.
One beneficiary is Abdul Latif Zakaria. He's been coming to Red Clay for years. His father, Dana, developed a passion for aviation while working as a compound's caretaker.
I'm very happy because it is a future generation that we are sowing here. Everybody want to sow a good seed. So when you sow good seeds, inshallah, tomorrow it will germinate.
Abdul-Latif says the center provides children with an opportunity to explore topics that would otherwise be closed off to them, helping them build confidence and learn more about who they are, or to put it another way, to a place where thoughts are allowed to take flight.
And that's the program. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale.